Hello, and welcome to the CreativeMoJo podcast. This is episode number 6. My name is Joanne, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And welcome to all new and returning viewers. It's great to have you join me for a little bit of your time while I talk about knitting and knitting related things in my life. So hi, how are you? I hope you're all good, and I hope you all had a great week. I'm going to start today with the giveaway that I was running for the last 2 weeks. I closed that thread this morning and I drew a winner for it. And the winner is going to get this beautiful, beautiful skein top draw sock. Skein is an Australian dyer, one of my absolute favorites. And I'm delighted to be able to give this away. So the winner for that is post number 24 in the giveaway thread, and that is Try Linda. So congratulations, Linda. If you will PM me your address on Ravelry, I will get this lovely skein in the mail to you. So that was great. I will be doing some more giveaways as the weeks go on. So, and quite possibly even some more skeins since I have so much of it. So that's that. So I'm going to start off with my works in progress today. I have a couple to show you. Let's see, where shall I? I'll start with my new socks. I'm doing, these are the, I'm calling these the All the Cows socks. They're actually the Hetera pattern by Cookie A. And I'm doing them, I'm calling them All the Cow socks because I'm doing them for all the cows. I'm doing them for the Cookie Jar Cow, which is with the Fawn Knits podcast and the Pin Feathers and Pearls podcast. Both those two gals are running that cow together. I'm also entering it into the Stellina cow that's being run by Molly of a Homespun House. The Double Dip cow, which is Fairy Little, that's Marsha from the Twitch and Stitch podcast. And also the Lace Socks cow that's that Andy is running in her group for her 10,000 Stitches podcast. So that's a lot of cows, one sock. I like that. Motivation to get them done, really. So this is, I cast these on beginning of, I think May 1st. All those cows I think started, or most of them started May 1st. And I worked on, this is about an evening's worth of work on it. It's so pretty. The yarn that I'm using is Cyborg's Craft Room, and it's in her Sparkle 8 base with Stellina, so that that's why it's eligible for the Homespun House cow. That's our lovely little logo. I don't know if that's focusing so great, but it's 75% merino, 20% nylon, 5% Stellina, and it's lovely yarn. I really, really, really like it. This is the cake. You can, oh, that shows the sparkles pretty well there, actually. It's lovely. It's not overly stellinated, which is kind of fun, but it's just got that great little sparkle. And then, like, so many colors in it, so many colors. So yeah, this is a really enjoyable pattern. I've actually knit this pattern once before, quite a few years ago, and I forgot how much fun it is because it looks really lovely and intricate, but it's interesting. You can see the yarn is pooling kind of in a fun way. There are different colors on that side than there are on this side, and that seems to be sort of consistent. We'll see if it changes as I go or not. This is the, I think, medium-sized sock, which is a 70 stitch cast on, or 72, I think maybe 70 stitch, 70, yeah. And it's just the lace is a great little 4-row repeat. I highly recommend this for if you're a fairly beginning lace knitter because it's very easy. I had it memorized. I memorized it after 1-2 repeats maybe of the chart. It's actually quite simple and straightforward. As I said, it's only 4 rows. 2 of those rows are essentially a rest row where you don't do lace, but it looks beautiful and complex and makes a really pretty sock. So that's those. The other 2 things that I'm currently working on are the shawl that I showed you last time, which is the Summertide shawl by Helen Stewart. Really enjoying this, really enjoying this. I think I had, did I put a marker? Yeah. I think I had about sort of up to about there done on it. I just had a little baby kind of start to it when I showed it to you last weekend, and I've done a bit more. The pattern is great in terms of a couple of things actually. It was originally released as a mystery cal, so it's in sections that were the clues from the mystery knit along. So it's like still set up as clue 1, clue 2, clue 3, clue 4, I think is the 4. So it gives you great markers to kind of go. And I am a couple of rows away from finishing what was section 1 or clue 1 of the pattern. So this part is just garter stitch. And then I think in clue 2, get into lace, and it keeps on in lace from there. So it's a really, really pretty pattern. The yarns, it calls for 2 yarns, and the yarns that I'm using, this is Hedgehog Fibers sock, and I'm using this lovely, lovely, again, with all the colors, because that's my thing, kind of. This color is called Exploding Peacock, which is really fun. And then later on, the bottom part of it, I'm going to be switching to this, which is this fantastic bright green called Shamrock. And I just thought those were really pretty spring colors. I think I mentioned this last time. I sort of feels like all the flowers and the bright green grass. So it seems like a great spring summer shawl. So yeah, I've made pretty good time, and I only worked on that one evening this week. So I made pretty good time on that, and that'll get lots more work, I think, this coming week. I want to make some good progress on that. So I'm knitting this on my signature needles. I may have to switch off of these because I think it's only a 24-inch cable that I've got on those. And as the shawl grows, and I don't think I've got a longer cable for this, so as the shawl grows, I may have to switch it to a longer needle. We'll see, but I'm enjoying knitting it on those needles for the moment. And the last thing that is a work in progress for this week is the sweater that I've been working on. I've showed, I think I've showed it to you twice so far now. Made quite a bit of progress on it this week. Worked on it several days this week. This is the Drifting cardigan by Cecily Glowick McDonald, and it's a short-sleeved, sort of swingy, a little bit swingy front cardigan. It's pretty cropped in the pattern, and I'm lengthening the body a bit because the cropped look is not the best on me. But let's see, it's got so much, there's a lot of ends and stuff in here, and it's a bit hard to show, but I'm going to do my best for you. I'm going to show it to you from the back because I think that looks a bit better. So it's I'm chugging along on the main body, and it's very easy at this point because there's not even increases in it. It's just straight back and forth stockinette, as long as you don't mind purling. And I'm adding a second color in and striping, and that's not in the pattern, but I'm doing that because I wanted to lengthen the body a little bit, and I didn't think I had enough of this color, and I wanted to make sure that I could make it to whatever length felt right. So by adding in some stripes. So what I've been doing on the bottom here, as you can see, I just finished my second black stripe, and this is a Wollmeise Pure, which is her 100% merino base, and the color up top here is called Indish Rot, which I think is Indian red, and it's a beautiful mix of sort of red and orange and some sort of orangey browns and sort of cherry reds. That looks pretty good. You can sort of see all the lovely mix of reds that are in there. And then for this I'm using, it's also Wollmeise, it's a black, it's called Schwarz. And so what I'm doing with the stripes down the body is I started with 2 rows of the black and 12 rows, and then 12 rows of the red. Now I've done 4 rows of the black, and I'm going to do 10 rows of the red, and then it will be 6 rows of the black, 8 rows of the red, etc., until I'm down to 12 rows of the black, 2 rows of the red, and then I'll continue on with the black down to the bottom. And I haven't decided yet, it's like I said, short sleeves. I may or may not put some black on the sleeves. I haven't decided. And I'm thinking I may do an I-cord bind off around it. I think the pattern actually calls for you to leave this to roll, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. Somebody was commenting on in in my Ravelry group, which if you haven't joined, you should. That it's CreativeMoJo on Ravelry. And somebody was commenting about having Volmiza, but not being sure about knitting with it because they weren't crazy about the fabric that it made. Now you'll notice here, part of what, with this pattern, you start actually with a 3.75 millimeter needle, and then when you split for the sleeves and the way it's constructed, for the fronts, you're actually picking up stitches along this sort of raglan increase in the front, and then knitting the fronts down, and that makes it sort of swingy or drapey. And when you do that, when you pick up these stitches along here, you switch to a 4 millimeter needle, and as you can probably see, if I hold this up, Volmiza does tend to, it's a very tightly twisted yarn, and it doesn't give you the neatest, smoothest stitch definition when you're knitting it up. It does though block out and relax, and look, this is my little swatch, and now this is on the 3.75 millimeter needle, so we'll see what the body does on the 4 millimeter. But you can see that once the swatch was blocked and washed, it looks much tidier and neater and more even than this is the same size of fabric. I don't know if you can see that, but it definitely has tidied up and neatened up and evened up the stitches, and it softens up somewhat too. So I'm hoping that even though this is kind of loose fabric, a little bit looser than down here in the 4 millimeter than I normally like, I'm hoping that once it washes up and evens out and stuff, it's going to just be nice and drapey. So there's that. So as I said, I've got quite a bit going on that, and I suspect that will not be too much longer. I've got about another maybe 10 inches to go, and I think what I want in the body, and then the little short sleeves, and then just deciding what I'm going to do for the edging, and that will be that. So those are the 3 works in progress I have from this week, but I also have 2 finished objects, which I'm pleased about. I finished my beautiful the Fawn and the Fox yarns socks. These are just a lovely standard vanilla sock. This is in her Badger base, which is the BFL nylon blend, and it's just, oh, such yummy yarn. I think I've raved about this on several of my episodes now, but you can see there's 2 socks there. These are for me. They're I did these 72 stitches top down, magic loop, and I did them on a 2 millimeter needle, so they're nice dense fabric. I think these are gonna hold up really, really well, and I'm really pleased with those. And then I finished a second pair, which I think I showed that I was working on last week. These are socks for my husband, and these turned out really nicely too. These are this is knit out of just Knit Picks Stroll Tweed, I think, in the Flagstone Heather colorway. See, it's a really pretty tweedy yarn. Those little flecks in there, and I did it's my basic vanilla sock pattern that I like to do, top down, magic looped. I did these on a 2.25 millimeter, also 72 stitches. And I put a little cable, if you can see, a little cable running down the front of the leg. I stopped at the top of the foot, and I mirrored it so that the cable is on the opposite side. As you can see, it's here and here on the 2 socks. Yeah, those turned out really nice. This is, for an inexpensive yarn, this is Stroll, the Knit Pick Stroll is a really nice yarn. It's just soft, really, really soft. But wears pretty well for all that softness. So those are my 2 finished objects for the week. Let's see, what else do I want to show you next? I have a little bit more stash acquisition. I keep telling myself that I'm not going to buy yarn, and then I buy yarn. I can't help it. There's so much pretty yarn, and I've been I'm going to say this, and then ironically I've been kind of really into investigating and learning more about Canadian yarn dyer, indie yarn dyers, which is super fun. But I've discovered that there's way more of them than I knew about originally, and a lot of them are incredible dyers with beautiful yarn, and I keep wanting to order all their yarn. And I said ironic because what I'm going to show you today, only one of the couple of skeins I've got here is actually from a Canadian dyer, but I do have some more Canadian dyer yarn on the way. But first one is, I couldn't help myself. I had to get another skein of Lara's Beautiful from the Fawn and the Fox yarns, another skein of her Badger base, the BFL that I just finished those other socks with, because I love this base. I love this yarn. And this is a really pretty color too. This is called Peach Perfect. And it is this sort of yellowy and peachy. It's coming up a little more yellow on the camera. It's actually a little more, it's more peachy in real life. But it's got then there's great, beautiful pops of red and beautiful green in it as well. And I think that that will knit up beautifully. I don't know, maybe come another pair of socks, or I may save it for something else. I don't know yet, but I just couldn't resist. And she had a picture on Instagram the other day of a new colorway she's dyeing up that she's also dyeing in this base that, if I can get my hands on it, because her stuff sells pretty quick, I may have to get a skein of that as well. So that came, and then what was very exciting, I got my first ever order of Barenwolle, which is German yarn, beautiful. Vicky, hand dyed in Germany. Vicky is her name, and I'll link these in my show notes, which is in the Ravelry group. And I got 2 skeins. So I'll show you this one first. The wonderful irony of this is that I was looking at some pictures on Instagram one afternoon, and who was it? Oh gosh, no, Debbie from the Periscoping Sisters was showing a picture on Instagram of the socks that she's knitting for the Cookie Jar Cal. And they were out of Barenwolle, and she was showing this beautiful picture of her lovely socks, and I was just drooling over the color and commented how beautiful I thought the color, that particular yarn was. Not realizing until my order came in the mail that I had ordered the exact color that she was knitting her socks in that I was wild over. So that made me really, really happy. This color is Wild Orchid, and it's just really pretty, sort of purple, hot pink, almost somewhere kind of between a purple and a fuchsia, really, and greens, and yeah, beautiful. So this base is the Barefoot sock, and it's a 80% merino, 80% merino extra fine and 20% polyamide. I never know whether you say polyamide or polyamide. I think it's polyamide, which is nylon. So, and nice and soft and bouncy and squishy. And the other one I got, this is the other beautiful one I got. All the colors in that. Love that with the teal sort of. This is tealy, dark green, somewhere in between those, dark teal and a dark green. This is probably really more green, but anyway. Then there's purple and sort of orangey gold in there. Really, really pretty. This Waldelf is what it's called, which is German, and I have no idea what that means, but it's beautiful. So, and then the last thing I picked up was, so I'll preface how I ended up picking this up as well. A funny story, while I was working on finishing up these socks, and like I said, I was doing it on a 2mm needle, which if you knit socks at all, you'll know is a pretty fine needle. But I think, as I've mentioned before, my needles of preference are wood. I really like the Knitter's Pride Dreams, I think they're called. Yeah, Dreams needles, but they are wood, so they are delicate. And I had been working on that sock. My husband and I had taken a little drive out of town for an errand. He had to take one of his guitars to a guitar repair guy that lives about half an hour, 40 minutes outside the city. And so it was a lovely day, so I went with him, and we took this nice drive, and I was knitting in the car. And when we came back into town, we had to do a couple of errands on our way back in, and I had just taken my socks, and instead of putting them back in their project bag, because I'm a dummy, I tossed them in my backpack. I tossed the project bag and the socks on the needle outside the project bag into my backpack. And there was a lot of other things in my backpack at that point, and some of them were heavy. And so when I pulled it out of you probably can see where this is going now. When I pulled it out of my backpack, I had snapped the needle off inside my backpack. Yeah, luckily didn't lose any stitches or anything, but I only had one other set of these of needles at this gauge, and they're on the I think that they're in the header socks that I showed you, or the other needles that I have at this gauge. So I had to go make an emergency needle run to one of my local yarn stores. And of course, can't go to the local yarn store without buying yarn, right? At least I can't. I always feel guilty if I go in a yarn store and don't buy something, although I was buying something, I was buying a needle, but plus the temptation, you know. And so, and I was the only customer in there at that point. The store is Pudding Yarns here in Calgary, and Sharon, the woman, that lovely woman that runs that store, was chatting away with me, and of course she took the opportunity to show me a bunch of things that they had in that hadn't been there since, weren't there the last time I'd been in. And so I picked up this. I really like, for socks, as well as all the beautiful indie dyer stuff I have, I also really have a fondness for the good sturdy German sock yarns, particularly for a lot of the socks that I knit for my husband. They wear well, and he's a little bit harder on his socks than I am in mine, and so I would say about 3/4 of the socks that I knit him are out of commercial German sock yarn. And there's so much nice yarn available in these brands. I knit with a lot of opal, and I really like that. And this is Regia, and this is the Arnie and Carlos. I think this is their third, series 3. Just really pretty colors. You can see the beiges and purples and blues and blacks, and lovely, you know, kind of masculine, but still fun to knit with. I'm lucky with my husband, and he loves his hand knit socks. He probably wears his socks more than I do, which is also maybe why he's harder on them. He has less pairs than I do, and he wears them all the time. And he loves them. He's such a convert. It's funny. When I first started knitting socks, he said, I said, "Do you want me to make you a pair of socks, honey?" And he kind of was like, maybe, I don't know. And he had this memory of socks that one of his aunts, I think, had given to him as a kid for Christmas, that she had made. And then being these sort of lumpy, scratchy, heavy socks. And this would have been in the 50s, probably. You know, there were a lot less choices in yarns, and they were just a lumpy, scratchy, icky socks that, you know, for 10-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever he was not the greatest Christmas present in the world. Although I think it's fantastic that she made him something, and he didn't appreciate it at the time, I guess, is it. But so that's kind of the picture he had in his head of hand knit socks. So he wasn't sure, but he said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And so the first pair of socks I made him, he put them on, and it was a revelation. It was like, oh, these are not like the socks that I remember from being 12. These are wonderful, and they're comfortable, and they're beautiful, and they're soft, and they're warm, and he fell in love with them instantly. And he wears his hand knit socks, like I said, all the time, and he's super happy for them. So, but the nice thing is that, because as we all know, most men have bigger feet than most women, not always all the time, but it's a little bit more of an investment to knit for a lot of men than it is maybe to knit for yourself or other women friends. So it's not as fun to knit, you know, if he only ever wanted, you know, gray socks or blue socks or black socks. But I'm really lucky because he'll pretty much wear any color, any socks that I knit him. He's not wild about having lace on his socks, so I don't do him lace socks. But other than that, he's not that picky. You know, he maybe wouldn't be crazy about hot pink socks, but maybe, I don't know. He mostly will knit whatever yarn I want to pick out and wear whatever yarn I want to pick out and knit for him. So that's great. So I can use lots of fun stripes and colors and things, and he wears them very happily. So anyway, that's that. That's the acquisitions this week. So let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, so for the last few episodes, I've been, all of the last few episodes, this is only episode 6. So I talk like I've got a bazillion episodes, but I don't. But I think most, if not all of the episodes I've up so far, I have given podcast recommendations of podcasts that I watch and enjoy. And I'm hoping to continue to still do that for a while until I run out of recommendations. But I don't suspect I'll run out anytime soon because there are a lot of podcasts out there. And in fact, I've been watching a lot more podcasts in the last couple of months, I guess. And the more I watch, the more new podcasts I discover because somebody will recommend them. And so certainly my subscription list on YouTube has grown like crazy. And so yeah, I've been watching all these other podcasts, and I've been thinking about what attracts me, what are the ones that I end up eagerly awaiting the new episode every week or every 2 weeks, and about why that is. And I had an interesting conversation with my husband the other day because he commented that I had been watching a ton of new podcasts. Most of the time I watch podcasts on our television. I either watch them through, we have Apple TV, and so I can either watch them through iTunes or all the ones on YouTube. I just stream them off my iPad onto the TV. I like the bigger screen. So if he comes around while I'm watching them, he will sit down and watch for a few minutes and sometimes comment and sometimes kind of laugh and go away. But we had an interesting conversation about what I get out of watching them and why I watch them. And so I've been thinking about that a lot this week and about the recommendations. I was realizing there are sort of 4 things that I get from podcasts that I look for that are what keep me coming back, what I really enjoy. And I thought I would share some of my thoughts about this with you. This may be completely different for you, for other people. In fact, I suspect it is, and I hope it is. But I just thought it's an interesting, it's an interesting way to think about it, and it's what draws me, and so maybe it would help you, in thinking about it. Because I guess the reason why I'm saying this is partly because there's a lot of podcasts, and like I said, your list can get really long, and it can become really, really hard to keep up with them all. But being able maybe to think about what draws you to them and what ones are at the top of your list might help you figure out sort of how to prioritize, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I was thinking that there are 4 things that I watch podcasts kind of for 4 things that I get out of them that tend to be the things that suck me in and draw me back and stuff. And I don't always get all 4 of these from every podcast. Sometimes I get 1 of them from a podcast, sometimes I get 2, 3, whatever. And it can be in any combination, but I watch for education, inspiration, encouragement, and insight. And like the 2 podcasts I mentioned in my last episode were the Lone Larch podcast and 10,000 Stitches. And the Lone Larch podcast, I think, is a really good example of what I think of kind of as insight, learning about other people, about who they are and what makes them tick and what other people's lives are like and what other people think about things. And I'm endlessly fascinated by that. Some of that may be that I spent my whole life working in the arts, primarily in theater, and at the base, I guess, really of that, I'm a storyteller. People in the arts are storytellers. So I'm fascinated by other people's stories a lot. And so anytime I can watch a podcast where I'm getting insight into, people that live in other countries or people that just have different jobs from me, or there's a million things. Shannon of Sock Etc., which I always love watching her podcast. I get a different sort of kind of insight there because she shares a lot of things about stuff that she's thinking about and reading about and listening to, and a lot of stuff about her interests in social justice. And so it's a different kind of insight. So there's that. There's inspiration. I really enjoy podcasts that inspire me in my knitting and other things, but predominantly, I would say, in my knitting. Project ideas, how to use different yarns, how to combine them, that kind of thing. I mentioned a few weeks back the Yarnings podcast with Christine, and I find, for me, that her podcast is very inspirational. In a couple of different ways, actually, not just the knitting. I think there's a lot about her podcast that I find inspirational. So that's a good example of that. And then, then there's the other two, which I said encouragement and education. And I was thinking about those two things because, as I said, the episode that the podcast that I mentioned last week, 10,000 Stitches, with Andy, one of her episodes that I watched recently, she was talking about a comment that a viewer had made in the chat threads in her group. And someone who'd said that one of the things they really liked, her podcast, she is a sock knitter. That's predominantly what she makes and what her interests are. And she is this year trying to knit her 50 pairs of socks. And she's going about it through categories. So the first 2 months, January, February, were all ribbed pattern socks. And she does knit-alongs during each of these different periods that you can join and participate and knit along with her. And so for the first 2 months, she did all ribbed pattern socks. The next 2 months were all cabled, and the next 2 months now are lace. That's I'm doing my cookie socks as part of that as well. And and she's learning a lot about all of these things as she goes. And I think a lot of the people that are knitting along with her are doing that as well. So somebody had commented how much they enjoyed that aspect, that they felt that, I'm just trying to remember exactly how they worded it, but that they felt that they were all in that journey. She felt that they were in the journey together, this viewer, and that sometimes in other podcasts they can feel like a bit intimidated because they're not as good of a knitter as that person maybe, or they feel like they're not as good of a knitter and they feel like that, I could never knit that well or that quickly or whatever. And they were really enjoying that they felt that they were learning these techniques along with her, and so going on this journey with her. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that's part of the encouragement. I think sometimes what we really need is that idea that you can do this too. And I think I know what she means, that sometimes you can look at other people's work and where they're at, and you can maybe feel like, oh, I don't think I could do that. I think that seems so far above me. So that kind of encouragement is great. But it made me think about that there's two other things. There's another kind of encouragement, which is to encourage you to step out of your box or your comfort zone a little bit, try new things, because that's how you learn. I think her podcast is doing that because I think it's a great way. It encourages somebody to maybe try a pair of simple cabled socks and they've never done cables before, or maybe they've never done socks before. So so there's that. And then I thought about the education aspect, because that's the other thing that's always been important for me, is that I mentioned, I think, on my last episode, that I'm predominantly a self-taught knitter, and I'm a visual learner, much more so. I do better at watching YouTube videos than I do in trying to read something in a book, although I'm going to show you a few books that I recommend nonetheless, that have helped me a lot. But but I respond really well. Like, my knitting really took off when I initially discovered a bunch of podcasts about 5 years ago. And that became a thing that encouraged me, inspired me, and educated me. And the education is, so I love podcasts where I might learn something. I might learn a new technique, a new skill. I might learn about something. I've learned a ton about different fibers. I learned a ton about spinning. I learned a ton about, like I said, different techniques, everything you can think of, pretty much. A lot of it I've learned from podcasts. And I just wanted to recommend a couple of those ones. Because the other thing that I noticed a bit is that with all the new podcasts that are springing up lately, I think again, I think it's so exciting and so fantastic. And I particularly am excited by all the new Canadian podcasts that are there, being one of those myself. But I also, I think it's important to really look around and look for all of the different opportunities you could get through watching podcasts, and make sure that you're, I think, not missing out on some of the ones that have been around for a while. Because that might not be in the circle of podcasts if you've really recently discovered podcasts, or or I guess, for example, I would say maybe only watching podcasts that are knitters that have been knitting for 2 years. You'll be getting a certain pool of knowledge and information, but you might be missing out on other stuff, is I guess what I'm saying. So I think it's great to experiment, look around, find out what else is there, and gather as many different types and pieces of information and stuff as you can. And there are a few podcasts that I started with that I highly, highly recommend, because they're some of the ones that I learned so much from, and that my knitting grew like crazy from engagement with these podcasts. The first one is The Knit Girls with Leslie and Laura. If you haven't watched them before, you should. They've been, I think they're in their like 6th year maybe of podcasting, which is incredible. And they're big in the knitting community in the US, in terms of being really well connected to so many different people now, even beyond the US. They run an event called SSK, the Super Summer Knit Together, in Nashville, I think, every summer. And they have fantastic teachers at that event. And and they just have a lot of knowledge themselves. And a lot of the knowledge that they have is stuff that they've been gathering from other people. And again, that's one of the things that intrigues me, that one of the things that drew me to knitting and keeps me with knitting is this feeling that I have this kind of connection to this history of a craft that people have been doing, predominantly women, but not just women, but a craft that people have been doing for hundreds of years. And I love that. And I love that there's that, I feel a connection to all of those knitters before me when I knit. And I think it's important that we don't kind of lose that connection and lose that information, and that tons of that gets passed down anecdotally, and some of it gets written down, which is great, but lots of it gets passed down as, there's so many stories that we have about learning from our mother or our grandmother, and, sitting at that woman's knee and learning what she knows about knitting. And so I think some of these podcasts, that's one of the things that they can do, is that some of these people like Leslie and Laura have had the chance to learn from a bunch of people that came kind of before, a generation a bit before them, and are big names kind of in the knitting world, and they have been gathering and processing that information, and now they talk about it, and you can learn from them. So again, the Knit Girls, that's I'll put the thing down here. The Fat Squirrel is another one that Amy Beth has a lot of information to impart, at least to me anyway. I feel like I've learned lots of things from her. The Stockinette Zombies with oh gosh, now this is horrible. Megan, I was drawing a blank. Megan and Amy. I learned so much. They were the first podcast I ever started watching, and they had quite a few episodes out. They've been doing it for several years now. Maybe 4, maybe 3, 4. I started at the beginning. I went back and I watched right from the beginning all their episodes. It took me quite a while to get up to date with them. But once I did, I had learned a ton. Megan, well, both of them are amazing knitters, and Megan is a very prolific sweater knitter. And it was watching their podcast and engaging with them through their Ravelry group and stuff that gave me the courage to really learn how to knit sweaters and to start doing that for myself. And that was so excellent and exciting. And I've been twice to the retreat that they hold in Rochester, Minnesota. And again, like, just life-changing experience for me. It was the best. It was sad that I can't go this year, but I'm hoping I'll be going back next year. And I just can't recommend that podcast enough. And then there are also a couple of really great audio podcasts that totally fall into this category. It's the Knitting Pipeline is another one of them that I highly recommend. So anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that I think there's something great about making sure that you're getting some of that, all of that variety. Even if you're a brand new knitter, there's so much to be learned from in so many different ways, from connecting to different podcasts and different kinds of knitters with different information to impart to you. So anyway, so in that vein, the last thing I just wanted to touch on here for today is a couple of books that I find super helpful. Most of these were ones I got early on when I was starting to learn to knit. And as I said, I tend to be a visual learner, but these books did help me a lot. Getting Started Knitting Socks by Ann Budd is an excellent book for, it is for top-down, classic, top-down heel flap and gusset socks, but this is what I learned to knit socks from, was this book. So highly recommend that if you're interested in learning to knit socks and you haven't done that already. Can't go wrong with this. Stitch and Bitch. This was my very first knitting book that I ever had, and it's pretty tattered. You know, it's had some loving. I learned all the basic things I needed to get started knitting from this book. I highly recommend it, partly because it's got great diagrams of stuff, and it's written so simply. It's written in a sort of simple, chatty, conversational way that tells you every basic thing you need to know to knit. Starting with, you know, like this is how to hold your yarn, you know, and it goes all the way through. There are some great simple patterns in here. I knit a few of the patterns when I was starting out. Hilariously, I knit a sweater out of this book. I'm just trying to see if I can find the picture of it. And it was before I had any kind of comprehension of gauge. And miraculously, I knit it for a girlfriend of mine that I was working with. And it was just a miracle. It fit her, even though I didn't really I can't find the picture of it now. Maybe it wasn't from this book. I thought it was. It was an amazing thing that it fit her totally by accident, because I had no clue about gauge, and I don't think I was using the right weight of yarn or anything. But another one, and this is actually from a series of a couple of books, is the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns. Again, another Ann Budd book. Her books are great. This is just basic sweater, sock, hat, mitten, glove, etc. Basic construction with a bunch of numbers to figure out for any gauge, any weight of yarn, to knit one of those items. So you can knit a hat. From this book, you can knit a hat with any weight of yarn on any size of needles and have it come out, because there's just sort of formulas and you plunk your numbers in. Super excellent basic book. And then the last one is something I got this for my birthday this year from my husband, and this is really great. Huge. See the size of this. This is a great big huge heavy book, but The Principles of Knitting, and this is like a Bible of on the back it says the definitive book of knitting techniques. And it's true. Again, it's pretty easy to read. You know, it's not something, because of the size of it, I don't know, there's 700 or 800 pages in here. It's not something that you're going to sit down and read from cover to cover, probably, at least I'm not. But I kind of flip through and I pick things out, and I go to it looking for specific things as well. So this was hard to get for a number of years, but it's come back on the market in a new edition. I think if you're in Canada, I think my husband picked this up for me at Indigo Books. And it's a little bit pricey, but I think really, really worth it. I've already used it a ton of times, and I'm super glad I have that. So that's those things. I think the last thing I guess I want to mention today is that I've got my first knit along Cal going on in my group. Again, the group is the CreativeMoJo group on Ravelry, and we've got a few people that have come and joined up into the Cal. I'm calling it the Late to the Party Cal, and the idea of it is for classic patterns on Ravelry, ones that have been around for a while and everybody and their dog has knit them and you haven't knit them. So for example, the monkey socks, Cookie Monkey socks. tons of people have knit those socks. Like there's 700 and some patterns, I think, on Ravelry, but lots of people haven't. So basically the rules are any pattern that has more than 4,000 projects already listed on Ravelry is eligible. And it's a 2-month knit along, and you could do socks or a hat or a sweater or a shawl or anything you can find. And I've created a bundle in the group, a pattern bundle. The link to it is on the first page of the thread for the cow. That gives you a bunch of examples of, I think there are about 25 patterns there, but there are others as well that you could find, and I've given a bit of a description of how to find those patterns, how to do a search to find other patterns as well. So I hope that you'll come and knit along. I'm starting to gather a few prizes, and I'll probably show those next week. But yeah, come and knit along with us, and that is everything. I'm just looking at my notes. Yep, that is everything that I have to say, I think, to you today. I'm so glad, as I said, that you came and spent a little time with me, and I hope I will see you again next time. Happy knitting.